regular segments where we talk about reusing, recycle, reducing as well. But for the first time in 2020, I've actually put some theme music together. So I looked around for some sounds of bottles being crushed and cans being crushed and paper being torn, and this is what I came up with. Yep, that's right. I spent way too long on the taxpayers' dollars putting together that theme tune to introduce my Talk and Trash regulars, Leslie Van Steveren, Dan Hannagan and Phil Carlon, back into the studio for the first time in 2020. Hello to all.
Hey, Kier. I don't know about you guys. I'm feeling pretty special with the theme music.
Love it.
Nice.
As I say, I won't tell people how long I computed doing that for. So it is our first session back for the year, so I figure we should just look at how green or how reduced and recycled our Christmas experiences were. Leslie, do you want to kick off? How green, how sustainable, let me use that term instead, was your Christmas experience?
My biggest change was gift wrapping paper. I mean, there were a lot of other things as well with considerations for catering and making sure it's food that could be used for the next day or so. But the wrapping papers, so instead of what we grew up with being used to and associate with this amazing, paper and wrappers and it all gets torn off and chucked away, I actually got this really nice red fabric that you have two choices. Obviously the kids don't have a choice, they have to give it back to me. But if I'm gifting, it's wrapped in this really nice red fabric with ribbons on that can be reused. So the choices are, once you receive that, is you can either choose to keep that fabric to re-wrap yourself, or give it back to me and I'll reuse it. So it'll keep on going round, so just reducing that way. So there is a number of other things, but yeah, I think
that's a good one. That is a good one. I mean, we know the wrapping paper, that you can't recycle that stuff, right? I mean, once you've used it, if you throw it away, then it's thrown away.
Oh, and events, obviously no plastic cutlery and plates is a big one.
And you managed to stick with that?
Wash up. Yeah, we washed up.
Good on you. Elbow
it's
grease.
Revolutionary.
Got you through. You can join in 1300 801 222. Did you make your Christmas more sustainable this year? Was there something you did differently, like Leslie did, when it came to wrapping paper? How about you, Dan? Was there anything extra sustainable about your Christmas period?
So before Christmas, when we spoke about it, we were talking about giving gifts of experience, and that was the main thing in our family. My wife got me tickets to comedy nights and stuff like that. I got her tickets to another comedy night and a concert and stuff like that. So that was a big thing, to give a gift of experience, and all it was an email, and then actually spending time with the family. We got the kids Lego, and we spent most of the Christmas holidays, we left the buckets of Lego in the lounge room so we could always be playing. And other games and stuff like that, things that you're going to hold on to for years.
And that's the case with that stuff. I mean, that never goes out of fashion,
yeah,
and will always be handed down or on.
Well, actually, a lot of the Lego was stuff that I built when I was 10, and my mother had actually kept it for years and pulled this old dusty stuff out. Kids loved it.
Absolutely. Well, no question. My children still do. My 12-year-old still, after she's finished doing something on the laptop, you'll hear the Lego come back out on the floor. And once she's over it, we certainly won't be throwing it away. It will be something that gets handed on to someone else.
Yeah, and we actually had Christmas at the creek. We spent nearly 8 hours. The kids had an absolute ball. We're out of the house pretty much the whole day. And other than a small bit of gift wrapping and the bonbons, which my mum had already pre-purchased, and, you got to love your mums. They wanted to make sure that my sons had that experience, and they did. They lit up. Yeah, and so my wife and I kind of shaking our heads as these little plastic toys went flying, and it's like, oh, okay. And it's just steps. So we're getting more and more efficient. We went to the creek, and every single dish and plate and cup was from home, and the whole lot went back into a bag. We took home and cleaned up, so there was nothing disposed of that day.
And look, I guess if you never throw away those little plastic toys that came out of the bonbons, that can count as being sustainable as well. Just never throw them away, Dan. Just keep them on you for the rest of your life.
And those little paper jokes. Terrible dad jokes.
Save them for the waste to energy plant.
Yeah, indeed. So Phil, what about you jumping in here?
The grandkids, of course, love the bigger boxes. And when you open them up and you find you have to go downstairs and get the cordless saw to cut through the plastic because they're bulletproof. My God, and you've ripped your fingernails out. And so we tried to reduce just down to a certain number of presents and kept them coming out. They had to open one every hour, which kept it going quite well. And again, it was the Lego that just won hands over. But it's the packaging that they...
Oh, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, the
But
amount
that's-
of
yeah.
it, all of those, the twists and stuff
Yeah.
that they do, multiple pieces of plastic holding it in the right position within the box,
Yeah.
and it always feels like it's been twisted in there with anger by the person in the factory, which I would understand if you worked in, you know, some toy factory somewhere.
Exactly.
We've started actually putting it out to people as in, you know, if you want to buy the kids something, can you, you know, you don't have to. We don't have to gift, you know, it's perfectly acceptable for them to not receive things and just enjoy the day. But if you could think about what you are buying, because the kids even now, for them, they're starting to look at some of the cheaper plastic items, and you know, our three are all quite little, and they're going, this is broken already. This is not good.
Yes.
So they're starting to see it. But yeah, experiences, as it was Cole's birthday the other day, and I got him a fishing charter trip.
Oh,
so to
beautiful.
go out on the reef, support the local industry as well.
Well done, well done. And look, you know, my family's had a similar experience in terms of we were overseas, we're in Italy over the period, so we didn't do any present giving at all, none whatsoever. And we also got to experience what their recycling process is like. So we were very much in the centre of town in places like Florence and Turin, within apartments or old, you know, palaces from the 1300s. And they have a system where you literally have to carry your separated, and much more separated than here, I'm talking like 5 or 6 different separations, down to a common local area outside of the building, often a block to 2 blocks away from your actual building. So it did change the behaviour for us when we were purchasing things to take back there, thinking that we would ultimately have to take all of this stuff ourselves down into the street, and it changed my purchasing decisions.
Did you
Interesting to
see
see if they've got
the
to deal with
vacuum system over there? In some of the cities that they just couldn't modify and have any space, they've got a terminal where you go out into the street, but you purchase a different coloured plastic bag for whatever.
Gotcha.
And you open the thing, you put the stuff in,
Goes down.
and it drops out
Okay.
somewhere at the truck.
So the
all
system,
the different
what we
bins.
saw was a system where it was like that, but they were actually huge bins
Yes.
underneath the thing that you would put your foot on, and the flap would kind of open,
Yep.
and then the truck would come along and pull those large
Yeah, same
bins
in
out.
Spain. Every park had the great big lineup of big bins, and they're all different coloured.
So here's a question I have for you. We're talking trash this morning with our experts in the field. I was just wondering, are those European countries facing the same dilemma that we are when it comes to, you know, how well they sort, how well they clean, and who will then take that recyclable product to actually recycle? Are they facing the same issues that we are?
They faced it earlier,
Right.
Because they ran out of land for landfill.
Gotcha.
So they had to solve their problems quicker and a bit smarter because they're more concentrated population. They didn't take it to the committee of death like we do in Australia. They actually solved a few problems. And it's just magic what they've come up with.
They are definitely ahead in technology and processes, and you know, even when I came to Australia 13 years ago now, I'm just blown away, you know, coming from the UK,
How
with all
behind we
systems
were.
and sorting, and that we are so behind in this stunning part of the world. So yeah, those do seem to be streets ahead, and you know, we're still having the conversation years later, and we really need to start seeing some action pretty fast.
And it did make me think about how ridiculously over-convenient our wheelie bins are here in Australia. It is so easy for us just to toss the wrong thing in. It doesn't fit in the green bin, I just chuck it in the yellow one. Which was just even the way that they communicated to us within the Airbnbs what we need to do, they were seriously imploring us to make sure that we did the right thing, and that they would get us in actual trouble if we didn't. You know, I will hunt you down. That was the kind of messaging that
Not such
they
a bad
used.
thing. Makes people actually stop and think.
Well, obviously everyone was and is thinking about it.
There does need to be an accountability, and the sad thing is that for the majority of us, particularly those who aren't part of the waste industry, who are under a false misconception of what level of recycling we actually do in Australia. And just like Leslie said, when she came over, she got a bit of a shock from England to come here, and you know, growing up in Australia, I had a misbelief that we were the clean country, and people would come over here and say it's so clean, And it was purely for the fact that we have such a low population for such a large area of land. And what we're seeing more and more is through illegal dumping and poor processes, our beaches, there's not a beach you can go to now that you don't see plastic and rubbish coming up. And even when you go to the reef, I love snorkeling and spearfishing and stuff like that, and every single time I jump in the water, I see something floating along. Now as a kid you didn't see it so much because of the sheer fact that we didn't have the population and as much single-use stuff being produced. So we have to be smart, we have to be proactive and not wait for a time where we have a resource of land and space that runs out, because essentially that's what's happened in Europe, and Japan's a great example. They ran out of space a long time ago, so they had to become very resourceful. And we've just had this culture where, you know what, let's just dig a hole and bury it, or let's just chuck it in the bin and someone else takes care of it, and it's out of sight, out of mind. And really the accountability, just like you said with those Airbnbs, firstly, we need to have it, and secondly, if you don't intrinsically, as a human, go, you know what, I'm going to be responsible, there has to be some external motivator that says, you know what, if we don't do it, we're going to get in trouble here. We need to do the right thing.
I do wonder if eventually there'll be some kind of system that can kind of test what you've put into your bin and maybe give you a bit of feedback as to what you've done correctly or incorrectly. Well, it probably wouldn't actually be that hard ultimately using a sort of
That's the European model. They've got a barcode on their bags, and if you put the wrong stuff in there, boom, ding, on the barcode, and it comes right back
Airbnb
in.
host is chasing after me.
That's why they're quite convinced.
But it does come back to the convenience and always just being able to stop and think for a second.
Well, I got tempted the other day because our bin was full. The recycling bin was full because we'd forgotten to put it out the week before last, and there was that moment where I thought, oh, I'll just put it into the...
That was full of coronavirus?
Yeah, it was full of coronavirus. And I didn't, so now we have the recycling that couldn't fit in the yellow bin all stacked up inside the carport, but that was better than chucking it into the green bin and having it just go to where it shouldn't go. 13 minutes away from 10 on ABC Far North, our trash talk segment as we do. And Dan, you mentioned before the illegal dumping issue, which over the last 6 months as the waste levies come in, there's been a focus, I think, both within the state and federally as well in terms of the fact that this is happening and perhaps happening more. How big a problem is it from your perspective?
Look, it's always been an issue, and I think now that we're having more and more talk about waste and the cost of disposing waste has gone up, it's really not that significant to the general public. To business, yes, but to the general public, there actually has been no changes in cans, particularly. The thing is that type of action, there's something missing where people don't really see the long-term cost of those actions or how it's going to affect the environment and generally people. So that's the bit that I feel like the message needs to get out, that that 5 minutes of quickly chucking out the back of the truck, you think it's going to save you some time or money, but really the cost is much greater both to the environment and financially. I'm not sure what the current costs are post-levy for the government, and with illegal dumping actually there is no levy for the government to pay. The council, last time we spoke about this, which was beginning of last year, they said that to clean up an illegal dump, when they're paying for council employees to do it, is around $2,000 per tonne.
And then would that even count then because then they're having to pay for getting rid of it as well, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many more consequences. So the Palaszczuk government has just invested $200,000 to Cairns Regional Council. So there's going to be more of a crackdown on it. So
that's extra money for them to spend on cracking down.
But here's the thing. I mean, I put out a post on Facebook the other day, and it was great because it had so much feedback from so many people. But the really common thing is, yes, there were a few sites identified, and there was reporting numbers and an online reporting space, which we'll share at the end. But the other really big thing is something that's really hitting home for everyone is the dumping outside of charities, because everyone sees it and is getting so frustrated because then that's volunteer time with people that can be doing so much better, and they're running charities. Why should they then technically be put in the waste industry to do sorting of what we don't want to deal with?
That's the worst, isn't it? Chucking stuff that is basically just rubbish outside of a blue bin because you think you can get away. Like, no one's going to notice we're doing this.
But here's the thing, we've all got phones, right? I think we need to add on a bit more accountability. So yes, we've got the direct reporting, But even if you're out and about, not while you're driving, because that's illegal, even in traffic, but take photos. I mean, because that's part of the reporting anyway, but if more of us are very aware, and if you see someone dumping, take a photo. Let's make it more accountable, because it affects everyone, and it is antisocial behaviour. It costs more of an impact on our environment, on time, financial, it's multiple issues.
And I saw a post on the Australia subreddit on Reddit the other day where someone had done exactly that. So a car flies past them and their passenger filmed the car as these two people both threw rubbish out of the either side window simultaneously.
Yeah.
So a lovely little post saying, you know, look forward to the sign, sucker, essentially, at the end.
I actually...
Don't approach people when they're doing it. And
Well,
get
no,
into a
that's the
conflict.
point. They were just taking
Film.
the photo. They just filmed it. You know, the license plate was clearly visible, and then they posted it through the website that they can do so.
And a lot of cars have got travel cams on them now.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
And you
Your
just
dash
swing
cam's
around,
now,
yeah,
right?
your dash cam, magic.
Yeah.
I had a funny story I'll quickly share. A friend of mine was saying, we're talking about waste, we're at the markets, and there's some, my kids had dropped a cup, and I quickly ran over to the gutter and picked it up, and he had some waste there, and they were riding, and I said, listen, I'll take it home and make sure it goes in the right bin. And he said, you know, years ago he was on a first date with a girl, and she finished a drink and she threw it out the window, and he was on Sheridan Street, he slammed on the brakes and pulled over, reached over, opened the door and said, get out, go pick it up.
Yeah.
And I thought, how many people are willing to feel socially awkward to actually do the right thing in this scenario? Like if someone's smoking near you these days, or near your kids, you're like, excuse me, could you move away? We don't have any issue with that. Yet if someone flicks a cigarette butt or throws rubbish out the window, it affects everyone. So I'm not advocating we go and start fights with people. But if there's someone who you actually have rapport with in your family or friends who has that type of behaviour, maybe suggesting to them, you know, there's a greater cost here, there's a problem with doing that.
And
They
look,
might just need that awareness.
and there's certainly, I mean, there's some of that within the mindset of, I think, the majority of people, because I think most people have the same response you have to seeing one of their passengers throw rubbish out of their car window. And I certainly know the young, you know, when I think about my kids in that teenage kind of bracket, they would similarly just think that that's abhorrent behaviour, even if they didn't know what the word meant. It is 8 minutes away from 10. Amanda is just pointing out also that Kirk Douglas has passed away. In breaking news at age 103. Or in other breaking news, Kirk Douglas was still alive.
Wow.
Which for some people might come as a surprise. So yeah, that's a shame. What an absolute legend he was. Now, I want to ask local level about just where we're at regarding the recycling, the sorting, all of that. You know, it's been one of the main topics over the last year that we've been discussing this, and the fact that there's a lot of stockpiling of stuff at the moment. Has there been any change internationally as far as accessibility of our recyclable product?
Well, I mean, and firstly, can I just mention as well, March the 1st is Clean Up Australia Day, just so we don't forget that part. But there's still conversation, but I'd love to see more action, because I know there's a lot of investment programs and fundings, the match dollar for dollar. There's a lot of people working on it in the backgrounds, and obviously Warren Ench has his plastic envoy, which he is driving forward with his draft and submission. So there's a lot of people working across the board to do it. So I would be very interested to actually see what is planned and strategized. And, you know, there's a time to stop talking and actually start building infrastructure. But the other challenge is we need to start actually buying recycled. So I know, like, as someone in the recycled manufacturing industry, you've got the whole challenge of perception of people, you know, believing it is lower quality when in fact it's not. So I think education is a big hand in hand, and if we want these things to be built, we have to support it and create the demand, because there's a lot of other people trying to do the same thing, but it allows more economy to come up, it allows more industry, and we need that. So every single time there's an impact with tourism, we are not absolutely brought to our knees. So we need more industry up here that is a consistent output. So yes, there's still a lot of talk, there is funding programs, but we need to see more infrastructure and things actually being bought.
And entities like the state government sort of taking a front foot in terms of utilising recycled material in projects that they're doing.
Yeah.
They are.
Well, they're planning to, so it is going to be policy for that to come in, but to go hand in hand with that, we also need more standards in recycled products. because this is, I think, where some of the perception is, because there isn't enough standards in those items.
To show to people that this meets
Yes.
this particular regulation.
And again, I can say from experience with us with ReGen Plastics, we've gone to the lengths of trialling and testing through James Cook University to make sure we have the mechanical strengths and it can be used, and we need to see more of that level of quality so people can have the faith in what they're buying. I know it is a high standard, and then we change the whole perception of plastic as a material and start to filter out all obviously the low grade aspect and move on to a high volume and raise the commodity.
You were going to say?
Yeah, that's the thing with this low grade plastics. We just have to stop manufacturing it. We've got to attack it at the source, and that's the big manufacturers that are putting it out there. We've got to hit them with extra compliance or tax. I don't know how the government can do it, but the government are the leaders in that. And it just come out for the waste management resource recovery the other day. They got a paper going to government. The rules that they've got going into landfill is unbelievably wow. If Dan's going to operate a landfill, he's going to need a lawyer sitting beside him. And
I do.
Yeah,
Literally.
exactly. And
Hi, Lee.
the bloke bringing the stuff in the truck, mate, I just want to get rid of it, Where can I dump it? No, you got to have a ticket for this, you got to have a ticket for that. Have you got any asbestos in there? Do you have PVC plastic? God, mate, I've got not a clue. My boss is going to screw me if I don't get out of here.
Yeah, look, that's an education thing. So with our clients, we had a 4-page contract that we had to create so that our clients are fully aware of the liability of bringing...
If they brought that particular thing or that particular thing.
And what we did for our skipping clients, because they're the ones that usually dropped off and they really aren't 100% sure what's in it.
Because other people can throw things.
So we actually helped them, educate them on understanding it, and provided them a contract that they could give. So I had my lawyer organise that, and the whole thing was to add value in the chain, because it's one thing to get really angry and just be frustrated with people's behaviour, or you can educate and say, listen, this is what it's actually, the problem's going to cause. That problem's going to cost everyone, so let's make sure we're all working together and on the same page, and that information gets passed along the line so that we don't have people doing silly stuff like throwing asbestos or hiding tyres or mattresses, which, those were the common things historically. And I can say, since we implemented these changes, and really, instead of being reactive and getting frustrated every time someone did it and
You've been
fighting them, get on the front foot. And I think education is always the key to make sure that people understand not only what the problem is, but why and how it affects everyone.
I think as well, it always comes back to taking the responsibility for own actions and never making it someone else's problem, whether it be individual, business, whoever it is. But the massive global topic is very much shifted onto climate change, obviously, and very necessarily, because that is an issue, whether or not you like the term or not, there is a problem. But I think with the realisation is when people can see that when you can recycle more, you have more industry more, you're using what's already in existence, and also in your local region, it reduces the emissions, it reduces what's generated during production, and then that all has a knock-on effect. So it's all connected. So even in our reduction of what we do and consideration, that has a direct impact on aspects that are generated that have a negative effect, whether it be the actual physical waste or emissions or transport, whatever it is. It comes back to just simply having a positive effect when we just pause for thought a little bit more.
That's the problem. We're dealing with these big businesses that are making big profit, and they're pushing down the hill at us.
Yeah. Well, again, Dan, Phil, I really appreciate you guys for coming in. It's always a great chat. And yeah, we will. I think in the next conversation too, also I want to touch back on the container deposit scheme as well, because we're at our local school, right, still struggling with what the best way to deal with it is that will work for the whole school community. So I'm going to do a bit of a whip around to some of the other schools and see what they're doing as well, and would love your feedback on that too next time we chat. Thanks for coming in here.
Thank you.
Here on ABC Far North, or which, by the way, there is a littering and illegal dumping reporting form you can find on the Queensland Government website. I just put in illegal dumping Queensland and it came up as the top link in my favourite search engine. So that's where you can go, and that includes video footage or pictorial evidence that you have as well. If you've got a dash cam, you got them on tape. Okay, so Leslie, Dan, Phil, thanks so much. See you in about a minute.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Here on ABC Far North, it is now time for the latest news. Phil and the quiz coming your way right afterwards. It's been great to have your company. It's 10 o'clock.